The November rain pelted against the windows of my parents' colonial-style house in Westchester, New York, creating rivulets that distorted the view of the manicured lawn outside. I sat in my beat-up 2009 Honda Civic for a full 5 minutes, watching the windshield wipers struggle against the downpour, before mustering the courage to face another family gathering. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as I rehearsed responses to the inevitable questions about my little computer thing. "You can do this, Marcus," I whispered to myself, adjusting the rearview mirror to check my appearance. The bags under my eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights spent coding, debugging, and rebuilding my platform from scratch. At 28, I looked older than my brother, Daniel, who was 5 years my senior and already a VP at Preston Manufacturing, the company our grandfather had founded 60 years ago. The front door opened before I could knock, revealing my mother, Patricia Chun Williams, perfectly coiffed despite spending all day preparing Thanksgiving dinner. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw me alone. "Marcus, honey, you made it." She peered behind me. "No +1 again this year." "Hi Mom." "No, just me." I forced a smile, stepping into the familiar warmth of my childhood home. The smell of roasting turkey and sage stuffing immediately transported me back to simpler times when my biggest worry was finishing homework before Monday. "Well, maybe next year," she said, that particular tone of disappointment she'd perfected over the years creeping into her voice. "Everyone's in the living room. Your father's been asking about your project. Project, not company, not startup. Project like something a child might present at a science fair." I found them all gathered around the 65-inch TV my father had installed last Christmas, watching the football game. My father, Robert Williams, sat in his leather recliner, the throne from which he'd dispensed wisdom and judgment throughout my childhood. Daniel occupied the corner of the sectional sofa, his wife Sarah beside him, their 2 kids playing on iPads at their feet. My sister Christina was there too, having driven up from Philadelphia where she worked as a senior financial analyst, another source of pride for our parents. "Look who finally showed up," Daniel announced, not taking his eyes off the game. "Traffic from Brooklyn must have been murder." "Actually, I moved to Queens last month. Cheaper rent." I settled into the only remaining spot, a creaky chair near the fireplace. "Cheaper." Christina turned to look at me, her expression a mixture of concern and condescension. "Marcus, are you okay financially? I could help you update your resume if you want to start looking for real positions." "I have a real position," I said quietly. "I'm the CEO of my own company." The room fell silent except for the commentators on TV. Even my 5-year-old nephew looked up from his game. Daniel was the first to break the silence with a snort. "CEO of what?" "That app you've been tinkering with." "Come on, Marcus. It's been 3 years since you left Goldman Sachs. Don't you think it's time to admit this isn't working?" "It is working," I insisted, feeling the familiar knot form in my stomach. "We just closed our seed round. 500,000 in funding." "From who?" My father finally spoke, his deep voice cutting through the room. "Your friend from college." "That's not real investment, son. That's charity. It's from Beacon Hill Ventures. They're a legitimate VC firm." "Never heard of them," Daniel said dismissively. "Look, Marcus, I get it. You wanted to try something on your own. But at some point, you need to face reality. I could get you an interview at Preston. We're hiring in our digital transformation department." "Digital transformation," I repeated, the irony not lost on me. Preston Manufacturing still processed most of their orders through phone calls and fax machines. Their idea of digital transformation was probably adding a contact form to their website. "It's a good opportunity," my father added. "Stable. Benefits. A real future. Not like this." "What do you even call it?" "SyncFlow," I said for the 100th time. "It's an AI-powered workflow automation platform for manufacturing and logistics companies." "AI?" Christina rolled her eyes. "Everyone's doing AI now, Marcus. What makes yours so special?" I opened my mouth to explain how our natural language processing could interpret complex manufacturing specifications and automatically optimize supply chain routes. How we'd reduced processing time by 84% in our pilot programs. How 3 major distributors were already in talks for enterprise licenses. But I saw their faces already bored, already dismissive, already certain that their baby brother was wasting his life on a pipe dream. "Dinner's ready." My mother's call from the dining room saved me from further humiliation. The dining room table was set with my grandmother's china, the same pattern we'd used every Thanksgiving since I could remember. I took my usual seat between Christina and my cousin Amy, who'd arrived while we were talking. Amy worked in marketing at a fashion startup in Manhattan, and was the only family member who ever showed genuine interest in what I was building. "How's SyncFlow going?" she whispered as we settled in. "We just hired our 5th engineer," I whispered back. "And we're in talks with Marcus. Why don't you say grace this year?" My mother interrupted, smiling at me from across the table. All eyes turned to me. I cleared my throat, suddenly aware of every sound in the room, the rain against the windows, the grandfather clock in the hallway, the subtle sigh from Daniel. "Thank you, God, for this food and for bringing our family together. Thank you for the challenges that help us grow and for the opportunities ahead. Amen." "Short and sweet," my father commented. "Just like your business plan, I imagine." Daniel laughed. "Does he even have a business plan? Or is it just disruption and synergy, and whatever other buzzwords they teach at those startup meets?" "Actually," I said, serving myself mashed potatoes with more force than necessary, "we have a 73-page business plan, financial projections for the next 5 years, and letters of intent from 2 Fortune 500 companies." "Letters of intent aren't contracts," Christina pointed out. "I see startups fail all the time because they count their chickens before they hatch. Remember my friend Lisa? She left Deloitte for a startup that promised her equity. 6 months later, they ran out of funding, and she had nothing." "That's different," I protested. "How?" Daniel leaned forward, his VP authority fully engaged. "You're burning through savings, living in increasingly sketchy neighborhoods, working 100-hour weeks for what? The chance that maybe, possibly, you might make something of this, while the rest of us are building actual careers." "Daniel," Sarah touched his arm gently, "maybe we should." "No, he needs to hear this," Daniel continued. "Marcus, you were always the smart one. Full ride to MIT, Goldman Sachs, straight out of college. You had everything going for you, and you threw it all away for what? To play entrepreneur." "I'm not playing anything," I said, my voice rising. "I'm building something real. Something that could change how manufacturing companies operate. Change manufacturing." My father set down his fork. "Son, I've been selling to manufacturing companies for 35 years. You know what they want: reliability, consistency, trust. Not some app from a kid who's never set foot on a factory floor." "I've visited dozens of factories in the past year, as a tourist," Daniel interrupted. "Not as someone who understands the business." "You think your algorithm can replace decades of experience, relationships, industry knowledge?" "I'm not trying to replace anything. I'm trying to enhance with AI," Christina added mockingly. "Let me guess, it's also blockchain-enabled, maybe with a little machine learning sprinkled on top." The table erupted in laughter. Even my young nephews giggled, though they couldn't possibly understand the joke. I felt my face burning, the familiar childhood sensation of being the family punchline. The weird kid who preferred computers to sports. The dreamer who didn't understand the real world. "You know what?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You're right, I'm just playing. Playing at building a company that increased Miller Distribution's efficiency by 67%. Playing at securing partnerships with 3 of the largest logistics companies in the Northeast. Playing at creating jobs for 23 people who believe in what we're building." 23 people. My mother looked concerned. "Marcus, you're responsible for other people's livelihoods." "Yes, Mom. Real people with real families who left stable jobs to join us because they see the potential that none of you can." "Potential doesn't pay mortgages," my father said firmly. "Sit down, son, finish your dinner." But I was already walking toward the door, grabbing my jacket from the coat rack. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. It was delicious as always." "Marcus, don't be dramatic," Christina called after me. "We're just trying to help." I turned back, my hand on the doorknob. "No, you're trying to make yourselves feel better about your safe choices by diminishing mine. But here's something none of you understand. I'd rather fail trying to build something meaningful than succeed at maintaining someone else's status quo." "Meaningful?" Daniel stood up to, "Ooh, want to know what's meaningful? Being able to provide for your family, having healthcare, saving for retirement. Not chasing some Silicon Valley fantasy that'll leave you broke and bitter. Like Preston Manufacturing is so secure." The words came out before I could stop them. "When was the last Time you looked at your actual numbers, Daniel. Your market share. Your client retention rates. Daniel's face darkened. What would you know about our numbers? More than you think. I opened the door, cold rain immediately hitting my face. Enjoy your turkey. I have a company to run. I heard my mother calling after me, but I was already running through the rain to my car. My hands shook as I started the engine, a mixture of anger, hurt, and something else, determination. They could laugh, they could mock, they could pity me, but they couldn't stop me. The drive back to Queens was a blur of rain-slicked highways and racing thoughts. I pulled into my apartment complex, a far cry from the Brooklyn brownstone I'd shared with roommates just months ago, and sat in the parking lot, engine running, heat blasting. My phone buzzed with messages from Amy, asking if I was okay, saying she was sorry about how dinner went. I appreciated her concern but couldn't bring myself to respond. Instead, I opened my laptop right there in the car and pulled up our latest metrics. User engagement up 340% month over month. Customer acquisition cost down to $847 from $3,200. 3 enterprise clients ready to sign pending 1 final security audit. The numbers told a different story than the one my family believed. I thought about Preston Manufacturing as I scrolled through our competitive analysis. The company my grandfather built with his bare hands, now run by people who thought a PDF attachment was cutting-edge technology. They had no idea how vulnerable they were, how quickly the industry was changing, how desperately they needed exactly what I was building. But they would learn. They all would. My phone rang. My CTO and co-founder calling from his apartment in Berkeley, where he was spending Thanksgiving with his own family. How bad was it? He asked without preamble. The usual. Except I may have implied I know more about Preston Manufacturing's financials than I should. Dude, I could hear him, shaking his head. Please tell me you haven't been digging into your brother's company. Public information only. SEC filings, industry reports, supplier gossip. Nothing illegal, but definitely something personal. I stared at the rain streaming down my windshield. They laughed at me, Kai. Again. My own family thinks I'm a joke. So, prove them wrong. But do it the right way. Build something so undeniable they have to respect it. Don't get distracted by revenge fantasies. He was right, of course, but as I sat there in my economy car, rain pounding on the roof, replaying every dismissive comment and condescending laugh, I couldn't shake the image that had been forming in my mind for months. The look on their faces when they realized their baby brother, the family disappointment. The impractical dreamer had built something that could buy and sell their precious Preston Manufacturing 10 times over. Marcus, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. You're right. Focus on building value, not settling scores. Exactly. Now get some sleep. We have that demo with Stronghold Logistics on Monday. I ended the call and finally turned off the engine. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and I could see a few stars peeking through the clouds. Somewhere in Westchester, my family was probably having dessert, sharing stories, reinforcing their certainty that hard work meant keeping your head down and following the established path. They had no idea what was coming. The industry was changing, faster than they could imagine, and I was positioning myself at the center of that change. Every mock, every laugh, every pitying look, I would remember them all. Not out of spite, but as fuel. Motivation to work harder, push further, build something undeniable. I climbed the 3 flights to my studio apartment, past the broken mailboxes and water-stained walls. Inside, my workspace occupied most of the living area. 3 monitors, a standing desk, whiteboards covered in system diagrams and revenue projections. This was my real home, my real family. The code that never judged, the algorithms that didn't care about my age or pedigree, the vision that burned bright regardless of who believed in it. I made myself a cup of instant coffee and settled in front of my computers. There was work to do, bugs to fix, features to implement, customers to win. While my family slept soundly in their comfortable certainty, I would be here, building the future they couldn't see. The email notification chimed a message from David Chen, CEO of Stronghold Logistics, confirming our Monday meeting and asking if we could expand the demo to include their Asia-Pacific operations. I smiled, the first genuine smile of the day. They weren't just interested, they were already thinking about implementation. Another notification, this time from our lead investor at Beacon Hill. They'd connected us with 2 more potential clients and wanted to discuss Series A timeline. The momentum was building. Quietly but undeniably, I glanced at the photo tucked into my monitor's corner, the Preston Manufacturing executive team at last year's company picnic. Daniel stood front and center, the heir apparent, surrounded by men who'd been there since my grandfather's time. They looked confident, established, untouchable. "See you soon," I whispered, turning back to my code. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint sound of thunder rolling away. The storm was passing, but another one was building, one that would reshape everything my family thought they knew about success, about security, about their place in the world. They'd laughed at my startup. Soon, they'd understand that the joke had always been on them. Tenter no vammantaget ark 2. The momentum shift. The Stronghold Logistics headquarters occupied 3 floors of a gleaming tower in Lower Manhattan, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the Hudson River. 6 months had passed since that disastrous Thanksgiving dinner, and everything had changed. Dextep my family's perception of what I was building. "Nervous?" Kai asked, as we rode the elevator to the 32nd floor. He'd flown in from Berkeley for this meeting, knowing it could change everything for SyncFlow. "Excited," I corrected, adjusting my tie, the same one I'd worn to my Goldman Sachs interviews years ago. Chen's email said they want to discuss strategic possibilities beyond a standard vendor relationship. That could mean anything. Or it could mean everything. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area that screamed corporate success: marble floors, modern art, fresh orchids on every surface. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 30s, smiled warmly. "Mr. Williams, Mr. Nakamura, welcome. Mr. Chen is expecting you. Right this way." We followed her through corridors lined with photos of cargo ships, distribution centers, and logistics networks spanning the globe. Stronghold wasn't just big, they were massive, handling over $2 billion in freight annually across 6 continents. David Chen's corner office was surprisingly modest, furnished with functional rather than ostentatious pieces. The man himself stood as we entered, extending his hand with genuine warmth. In his 50s, with silver threading through his black hair, he had the bearing of someone who'd built his success through intelligence rather than inheritance. "Marcus Kai, thanks for coming. Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee, water, would be great," I said, settling into one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "So," Chen began once we were all seated, "I'll cut straight to the chase. We've been running your platform in our Northeast operations for 3 months now. The results are, well, they're extraordinary." He turned his monitor toward us, displaying a dashboard. I knew intimately it was our software, but populated with Stronghold's data. 37% reduction in processing time, 29% decrease in shipping errors. And most impressively, we've identified and eliminated $6 million in redundant routing costs. In 3 months, we're glad the platform is delivering value, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the excitement building in my chest. "Value?" Chen laughed. "Marcus, you're being modest. Your system identified inefficiencies our best consultants missed. It's not just delivering value, it's transforming how we operate. That's the goal," Kai added. "We designed SyncFlow to learn and adapt to each client's specific patterns and needs." Chen leaned back in his chair, studying us. "Which brings me to why you're really here. We don't want to be just another client. We want to be partners. Investors. I'm prepared to lead your Series A with a $20 million commitment." The number hung in the air between us. 20 million. More than enough to scale our operations, hire the talent we needed, and accelerate our product development. "That's very generous," I managed. "It's strategic," Chen corrected, "but there's more. We want exclusive rights to the platform for logistics companies in the Asia-Pacific region. And we want to integrate SyncFlow so deeply into our operations that we become the case study for digital transformation in this industry." "Exclusive rights would limit our growth potential," Kai pointed out. "We have interest from other logistics companies in that region." "I'm aware, which is why we're also proposing a revenue-sharing agreement. Every client you onboard in other regions pays us 2% of their contract value. In exchange, we become your champion, your proof of concept, your foot in the door with every major player in the industry." I exchanged a glance with Kai. This was bigger than we'd anticipated, more complex but also more promising. "We'd need to see the full terms," I said carefully. "But conceptually, we're interested." "Good. My team will send over the term sheet this afternoon. But Marcus, can I be frank with you? I nodded. I've been in this business for 25 years. I've seen hundreds of startups promise to revolutionize logistics. They all failed because they didn't understand one crucial thing: this industry doesn't trust outsiders. You need credibility, relationships, proof that you can deliver not just technology but reliability. We understand that, do you? Chen interrupted gently. Because from what I can tell, you're two brilliant young men with no background in logistics, no industry connections, no track record except what you've built in the last few years. That's not a criticism, it's a reality. You need partners who can open doors, vouch for you, translate your innovation into language this industry understands. He was right, of course. Every client meeting involved overcoming the same skepticism, proving ourselves again and again. What are you proposing? I asked. I want to join your board. Not just as an investor but as an advisor, a connector, a bridge between your technology and our industry. And I want to bring in 2 more strategic investors, leaders from manufacturing and retail, who can round out your market approach. That's a lot of influence for a Series A investor, Kai said. It's a lot of value for a company that needs it, Chen countered. Look, I could write you a check and wish you luck. Plenty of VCs would do just that. But I believe in what you're building, and I want to ensure it succeeds. That means getting hands-on, opening my Rolodex, and yes, having a say in strategic decisions. My phone buzzed a text from my sister. Family dinner Sunday. Mom insists. Try to make it this time. I silenced the phone, refocusing on Chen. Here was someone who saw our potential, who wanted to invest not just money but reputation and relationships into our success. Meanwhile, my own family still treated me like a child playing with toys. We'll need to discuss this with our current investors, I said, but personally, I'm excited about the possibility. Chen smiled. Good, because there's one more thing. We're hosting our annual partner summit next month in Miami. 500 of the biggest players in logistics and manufacturing. I want to be our featured innovation. Full keynote, demo stations, executive meetings. It could change your trajectory overnight. That single quotes s. Incredible, Kai said. The exposure alone would be worth millions in marketing. Chen finished. Exactly, but you'll need to be ready. Polish the platform, prepare your pitch, and most importantly, be ready to scale. If this goes well, you'll have more demand than you can handle. We spent another hour discussing details, integration timelines, performance metrics, strategic priorities. By the time we left, my head was spinning with possibilities. In the elevator, Kai let out a long breath. Holy shit, Marcus, this is really happening. It's just the beginning, I said, but I couldn't suppress my grin. 20 million Kai, plus strategic support. We could actually do this. We are doing this. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? Because if Chen's right, we're about to go from startup to scale-up in hyperspeed. As we emerged onto the bustling Manhattan street, I felt a shift in the air. Not just the physical transition from climate-controlled office to humid June afternoon, but something deeper. For 3 years, I'd been pushing against a wall of skepticism and doubt. Now, finally, that wall was beginning to crack. My phone rang, another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Marcus Williams. This is Janet Morrison from TechCrunch. We heard about your deal with Stronghold Logistics. Any chance you could give us an exclusive on the funding round? I covered the phone, whispering to Kai. TechCrunch knows. His eyes widened. Chen moves fast. I'd be happy to discuss it, I told the reporter. When were you thinking? How about now? I can send a photographer to your office in an hour. Our office, the converted warehouse in Long Island City we'd moved into 3 months ago, still sparse but functional. A far cry from the gleaming corporate spaces of my family's world, but it was ours. Make it 2 hours, I said. We'll be ready. The ride back to Queens was a blur of phone calls and messages. Our Slack channels exploded with excitement as word spread through the team. Emily, our head of sales, already had 3 meetings lined up based on the rumors alone. James, our lead engineer, sent a gif of champagne bottles popping. But between the congratulations and strategic planning, my thoughts kept drifting to that text from Christina. Family dinner. Another opportunity to be diminished. To have my achievements reduced to cute experiments while they discussed real business. You're thinking about them again, Kai observed as we pulled up to our building. Is it that obvious? Dude, you get this look every time your family comes up. Like you're preparing for battle. Maybe I am, Or maybe, he suggested, gently, you could just let it go. We're about to close a massive round, get featured in TechCrunch, and transform an entire industry. Who cares what they think? He was right, logically. But logic had never governed family dynamics. Every success felt hollow without their recognition, every achievement incomplete without their approval. It was pathetic, really, a grown man, still seeking validation from people who'd already decided his worth. The office was buzzing when we arrived. Our team of now 35 people had decorated the space with balloons and a banner reading SenseFlow, Future Unicorn. Someone had ordered pizza and champagne, the good stuff, not the bottom-shelf bottles from our early celebration days. Speech, Emily called out as I walked in. Our fearless leader needs to mark this moment. I climbed onto a desk, looking out at the faces that had bet their careers on our vision. Young and old, engineers and salespeople, designers and marketers united by belief in what we were building. 3 years ago, I sat in a coffee shop with a laptop and an idea. Everyone told me I was crazy. That logistics was too complex, too entrenched, too resistant to change. That I should get a real job, follow a safe path, be practical. Murmurs of recognition rippled through the crowd. They'd all heard similar doubts. But we knew better. We knew that every industry, no matter how traditional, eventually faces disruption. We knew that artificial intelligence could solve problems humans couldn't even see. And most importantly, we knew that betting on ourselves was the only bet worth making. Cheers erupted. Someone handed me a glass of champagne. Today isn't just about funding. It's validation that our vision has merit, that our work has value, that we're building something that matters. But it's also just the beginning. Chen and Stronghold are giving us rocket fuel. Now we need to prove we can fly. To flying. Kai raised his glass. To flying. Everyone echoed. As I mingled with the team, accepting congratulations and discussing next steps, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Marcus, I just saw something online. About your company? Is it true? $20 million. News travels fast, I said, stepping outside for privacy. Why didn't you tell us? This is wonderful. Your father will be so proud. Will he? I wanted to ask. Or will he find a way to minimize this too? It's not finalized yet, Mom. Just a term sheet. Still, it's progress. You'll tell everyone at dinner Sunday. I'll try to make it. Marcus, her tone shifted to the one she'd used when I was young and being difficult. I know Thanksgiving was hard, but we're your family. We love you. We just want what's best for you. I know, Mom. And maybe now that you're doing well, you could help. Daniel. Preston has been struggling lately. Some new competition, changing market dynamics. Your brother's under a lot of pressure. There it was. Even in my moment of triumph, the conversation shifted to Daniel's needs, Preston's challenges. As if my success only mattered in relation to how it could benefit the family business. I have to go. Mom, the reporter's here. Of course. We'll see you Sunday. And Marcus. Congratulations, really. I hung up and stood for a moment in the afternoon sun, watching traffic crawl along the expressway. Inside, my team was celebrating our biggest win yet. My phone had dozens of messages from investors, clients, and industry watchers suddenly very interested in what we were building. TechCrunch wanted our story. Stronghold wanted to make us the face of innovation. But all I could think about was Preston Manufacturing struggling with new competition and changing market dynamics. They had no idea their competition wasn't just new, it was fundamental. The same forces lifting SenseFlow were gradually undermining everything Preston represented. Marcus, Emily stuck her head out the door. Photographers here. I straightened my tie, that Goldman Sachs relic that had seen me through every important moment, and headed back inside. There would be time to think about family dynamics later. Right now, I had a company to build and a future to create. The photo shoot was surreal. The photographer positioned us around our workspace, capturing the organized chaos of a startup on the rise. Kai and I stood at the center, surrounded by our team, everyone wearing SenseFlow t-shirts and genuine smiles. This was our family photo. I realized the people who believed when no one else would. Can we get one of just the founders? The photographer asked. As Kai and I stood shoulder to shoulder, I thought about all the family photos lining my parents' walls. Daniel, in his Preston Manufacturing polo at the company picnic. Christina at her Wharton graduation. Me, notably absent from recent years, as if I'd ceased to exist when I left the approved path. Perfect, The photographer said, "That's the one. You both look like you're ready to conquer the world." "We are," Kai said simply. The interview with Janet Morrison was equally surreal. She asked about our origin story, our technology, our vision for the future. But her most interesting question came at the end. SyncFlow seems perfectly positioned to disrupt traditional manufacturing and logistics companies. Are there any specific incumbents you see as vulnerable to your approach? I thought of Preston, of Daniel's dismissive laughter, of my father's certainty that relationships trumped technology. Every company that thinks their traditional moat will protect them forever is vulnerable. The question isn't if they'll be disrupted, but whether they'll adapt in time. Any examples? I'd rather focus on the companies embracing change, like Stronghold. They're the ones who'll thrive in the new economy we're building. She smiled, sensing there was more to the story but professional enough not to push. Fair enough. Last question: what drives you? What makes you work the 100-hour weeks? Take the risks, push through the doubts. I considered lying, giving her something inspirational about changing the world or democratizing technology. But the truth came out instead. Everyone has something to prove. To themselves, to the market, to the people who doubted them. I'm no different. I just choose to prove it through building rather than talking. After she left, the office gradually emptied as team members headed home to continue celebrating in their own ways. Only Kai and I remained, sitting in the conference room we'd built from IKEA furniture, surrounded by whiteboards covered in our expansion plans. 20 million, he said again, still processing. You know what this means. We can hire the senior engineers we need. Expand to the West Coast. Build out the enterprise features. No, he interrupted. I mean, yes, all that. But Marcus, this means we've made it. We're not playing startup anymore. We're building a real company. We always were. You know what I mean? This is validation. Proof. Everything your family said was wrong. I spun in my chair, looking at our logo painted on the wall, a stylized flowchart transforming into a river, representing the seamless movement of goods we enabled. They don't know about any of this yet. Well, my mom saw something, but the details. The scale. Sunday dinner will be interesting. You're going? Apparently, Preston's struggling. My mom wants me to help Daniel. Kai laughed. That's rich. The black sheep helping the golden child. How the tables turn. It's not about that, I said, though we both knew I was lying. If Preston's struggling, it validates our thesis. Traditional companies need what we're building, but do they deserve it? After how they treated you. I thought about Thanksgiving, about years of condescension and dismissal. Then I thought about our mission statement, printed in large letters on the wall, empowering every business to operate at the speed of thought. It's not about what they deserve. It's about building something bigger than personal grievances. Very mature, Kai said. Also, complete bullshit. You want to walk into that dinner with a TechCrunch article and a 20 million term sheet. Don't pretend otherwise. He was right. The thought of their faces when they realized their joke of a brother was now running a company worth more than Preston's annual revenue, it was intoxicating. Maybe a little, I admitted. Use it, he advised. That chip on your shoulder got us here. Just don't let it define where we go next. As I finally left the office near midnight, the city sprawled before me in all its glittering possibility. Somewhere in Westchester, my family was sleeping soundly, unaware that their world was about to shift. The little brother they'd mocked, the startup they'd dismissed, the future they couldn't sit, was all converging. Sunday's dinner would be different. This time, I wouldn't be defending a dream. I'd be presenting a reality they couldn't ignore. Backed by people who understood vision better than tradition, innovation better than inheritance. The rain had started again, a light drizzle that made the streetlights shimmer. I thought about that Thanksgiving night, running to my car in defeat. Now I walked slowly, savoring each step, each breath of humid air mixed with possibility. My phone buzzed one last time, a LinkedIn notification. Daniel had finally viewed my profile. After years of ignoring my professional existence, Big Brother was suddenly curious about what little Marcus was up to. See you Sunday, I whispered to the night air, a smile playing at my lips. The game was changing, and for the first time, I held the winning cards. Tentar, Novo Mantigo que ditar Sheptertris. The revelation. The Preston manufacturing headquarters looked exactly as it had when I was 12 and my father first brought me Hera. Sprawling complex of beige buildings in an industrial park outside Yonkers, unchanged except for the wear of time. The parking lot was emptier than I remembered, with gaps where employees used to fight for spaces during the morning rush. It was Tuesday, 3 days after the family dinner that had changed everything. I sat in my Tesla Model 3, a recent indulgence, after the Stronghold deal closed, reviewing the email on my phone one more time. Marcus, please come to Preston as soon as possible. We need to discuss the situation privately. Daniel, no explanation, no context, just urgency bleeding through every word. The dinner had been awkward enough when I'd shown them the TechCrunch article, their congratulations stiff and forced. But when I'd casually asked about Preston's challenges, Daniel had shut down completely, insisting everything was under control. Apparently, control had slipped. I found Daniel in our grandfather's old office, now his, surrounded by bankers' boxers and financial statements. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the 3 days since I'd seen him. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his Princeton tie loosened, his eyes rimmed with the red of sleepless nights. "Thanks for coming," he said without looking up from the papers spread across his desk. "Close the door." I did, then settled into the same chair where I'd once watched our grandfather negotiate deals with a handshake and a smile. "What's going on, Daniel?" He finally met my eyes, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. "We're fucked, Marcus. Completely, utterly fucked. Define fucked." He laughed bitterly. 3 major clients gone in 6 months. Revenue down 42%. We're hemorrhaging cash, missing loan covenants, and the board is in full panic mode. Goldman's threatening to call our credit line. Goldman Sachs. My former employer holding my brother's faith. Irony wasn't lost on either of us. Dad didn't tell you, we've been their client for 15 years. Lot of good it's doing us now. He rubbed his face with both hands. They smell blood in the water. What happened? Last I heard, Preston was rock solid. What happened? Daniel's voice rose. The world changed while we were standing still. Our biggest client, Meridian Industries. They switched to a fully automated procurement system. Cut us out completely. Hartford Motors. They're using some AI platform that predicts their needs better than our sales team ever could. And Stronghold Logistics, what about Stronghold? I kept my voice neutral. They used to be our 3rd largest client. Now they're working with some startup that apparently does everything we do but faster, cheaper, and without the need for human intervention. He looked at me sharply. "You work in tech. You know anything about a company called Sync?" The moment stretched between us, pregnant with possibility. I could lie, deflect, pretend ignorance. Or I could finally have the conversation we'd been avoiding for years. "I know everything about SyncFlow," I said quietly. "I founded it." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel stared at me, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, crushing realization. "You," he said. "You're the one who built the platform that's making your business model obsolete." "Yes, our client, Stronghold, they're using your system. Along with 47 other major companies and counting." He stood abruptly, sending papers scattering. "You targeted us. You deliberately went after our clients." "I targeted an inefficient market. The fact that Preston operates in that market is coincidental. Bullshit." He slammed his hand on the desk. "This is about Thanksgiving, about the family dinners, about proving us wrong." "You're right," I interrupted. "It started that way. Every dismissive comment, every patronizing laugh, every suggestion that I get a real job, it all fueled me. But Daniel, what I built isn't about revenge. It's about the future. And Preston chose to ignore that future." "We trusted relationships," he said, sinking back into his chair. 60 years of relationships. And I built technology that makes those relationships scalable. Our AI doesn't replace human connection, it amplifies it. Your sales team spends hours on manual processes we automate in seconds, freeing them to actually build relationships instead of pushing paper. "Our sales team," Daniel corrected bitterly, "we had to let half of them go last month." The weight of that hit me. Real people, real families affected by the creative destruction I'd unleashed. "I'm sorry. That wasn't what? Wasn't intentional. Wasn't personal." He laughed. "Do you know what Mom and Dad are going through? Their entire retirement is tied up in Preston stock. If we go under, you're not going under," I said. "No, you've seen our numbers. You probably know them better than I do, given how thoroughly you've studied our weaknesses. Tell me, Marcus, How does Preston Manufacturing survive when everything we do can be done better by an algorithm? I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the loading docks where trucks had once lined up, 20 deep, now only to sat idle, their drivers probably wondering if this would be their last run. What if it didn't have to? I asked. What? I turned back to face him. What if Preston didn't fight the future but embraced it? What if instead of competing with technology, you leveraged it? You mean use SyncFlow? His voice dripped with disdain. Crawl to my little brother and beg for help. I mean transform Preston into something sustainable. You have 60 years of industry knowledge, relationships that actually do matter, and a brand that still means something. I have technology that could make all of that 10 times more valuable. A partnership. Daniel studied me with newfound wariness. What kind of partnership? I pulled out my phone and showed him a presentation I'd been working on since Sunday's dinner. Since the moment I'd realized Preston's troubles were deeper than anyone admitted. A full digital transformation. We integrate SyncFlow into every aspect of Preston's operations. Your inefficiencies disappear overnight. Your salespeople become superpowered consultants backed by AI insights. Your inventory management goes from reactive to predictive, and your customer relationships, the ones you still have, become case studies in how traditional companies can evolve. And in return, Preston becomes SyncFlow's flagship transformation story. Co-marketing, co-development, shared success, and ... I paused, knowing the next part would sting. SyncFlow acquires a 49% stake in Preston Manufacturing. 49%. Daniel shot to his feet again. You want to buy half our family's company. I want to save our family's company. The alternative is watching it die a slow, painful death while competitors and, yes, I mean my competitors, pick apart everything Grandpa built. This is what you wanted all along. His voice was quiet now, defeated. To own us. To prove you were right and we were wrong. Maybe, I admitted. But somewhere along the way, it became about more than that. It became about building something that could actually help companies like Preston. You think I'm the villain here, Daniel, but I'm offering you a lifeline. A lifeline with strings attached. You'd effectively control Preston. I'd effectively save Preston, and you'd still run it, still be the face of the company. I have no interest in managing day-to-day operations. I just want to prove that my technology can transform even the most traditional businesses. He walked to the wall, where portraits of our grandfather and father hung, black and white photographs from Preston's golden age. They'd roll over in their graves. Grandpa built this with handshakes and hard work, not algorithms and venture capital. Grandpa built this to support his family, I countered. If you were here, watching it crumble, watching Mom and Dad's retirement evaporate, what would he choose? Pride or survival? Daniel's shoulders sagged. I'd never seen my older brother look so defeated, so small. The golden child who'd always had all the answers suddenly faced with questions he couldn't solve. I need to think about it. Talk to the board, to Dad. You have 72 hours, I interrupted. After that, the offer drops to 40%. After a week, 30. Preston's value is declining every day you wait. Jesus, Marcus, when did you become so cold? The same day you told me I was wasting my life. The same day Dad said I didn't understand the real world. The same day, Christina suggested I update my resume for a real position. I learned that warmth doesn't build billion-dollar companies. Results do. Is that what SyncFlow's worth now? $1 billion? After our Series B closes next month. $1.3 billion. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The little brother he'd no nigger to please, desperate for a proof, been replaced by someone harder, sharper, forged in the fires of dismissal and doubt. Get out, he said quietly. I need to think. I headed for the door, then stopped. Daniel, for what it's worth, I never wanted it to happen this way. I wanted to build something you'd be proud of, something the family would celebrate. But you never gave me that chance. So I built it anyway. And now you want to buy us with it. Now I want to save you with it. There's a difference. I left him there, surrounded by the debris of a dying business model, and walked through Preston's halls, one last time. Employees I didn't recognize gave me curious looks. Who was this stranger in their midst? They had no idea their future might rest in my hands. That the next 72 hours would determine whether Preston Manufacturing evolved or expired. In the parking lot, my phone exploded with notifications. The Series B announcement had leaked, and every tech journalist wanted a comment. Clients were reaching out, Competitors were panicking, and my team was fielding more interest than we could handle. But I sat in my Tesla, engine off, staring at the building where I'd first learned about business from my grandfather's stories. He'd built Preston with nothing but determination and integrity. I was trying to save it with algorithms and ambition. Both of us driven by the same goal, taking care of family but using vastly different tools. A knock on my window startled me. Christina stood outside, dressed in her financial analyst power suit, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. I lowered the window. "Let me guess. Daniel called you. He's falling apart in there," she said. "Is it true?" "Everything he told me." "Depends what he told you." "That you built the technology that's killing Preston. That you're now trying to buy us out. That my baby brother is suddenly worth more than our entire family combined." "Then yes, it's true." She walked around to the passenger side and got in without asking. For a moment, we sat in silence, siblings who'd shared a childhood but diverged into completely different worlds. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. "Christina, let me say this. We treated you like a failure because you didn't follow our path. We mocked your ambitions because they threatened our certainty. And now, she gestured at the Preston building. Now our certainty is crumbling while your ambitions are soaring. I never wanted to hurt the family business, but you did. Intentionally, or not, you built something that makes us obsolete. And the worst part, you were right, we should have listened, should have adapted, should have seen what was coming. But we were too proud, too comfortable, too sure that the old ways would always work. They worked for 60 years, until they didn't." She turned to face me. "Daniel's going to fight you on this. He sees it as surrender, as admitting you won. But I've run the numbers, Marcus. Without your help, Preston has maybe 6 months. With it, Preston becomes a case study in successful transformation. Your expertise plus my technology equals something neither could achieve alone. 49% is steep. 49% of something is better than 100% of nothing." She smiled sadly. "When did you become the pragmatic one? When the family dreamer had to become the family savior. Is that what you think you are? Our savior?" I started the car, the electric engine humming to life silently. "No. I'm just a kid with a computer thing that turned out to be worth something. The question is whether the family can swallow their pride long enough to benefit from it. I'll talk to Daniel, and Dad, and the board. They'll listen to me." "Why would you do that?" She gathered her purse, preparing to leave, "Because despite everything, the dismissal, the mockery, the years of treating you like you didn't belong, you're still here, offering to help. That's more grace than we deserve. It's business, Christina, not charity. No, Marcus. It's family. Complicated, dysfunctional, painful family. But family nonetheless." She left, walking back toward the building with the determined stride of someone with a mission. I watched her go, then pulled out of the parking lot for what might be the last time, more, the beginning of many returns. My phone rang. Kai, checking in from our new San Francisco office. "How'd it go?" he asked. I offered to buy 49% of Preston Manufacturing. Holy shit, and now we wait. Either they accept reality and we help them transform, or they cling to pride and we watch them fall. You okay with either outcome? I thought about Daniel's devastated face, about Christina's apology, about my parents' retirement hanging in the balance. No, but I'm prepared for either outcome. There's a difference. For what it's worth, Kai said, I think you're doing the right thing. Offering them a path forward when you could just let them fail. The right thing would have been building something they could be proud of from the start. This is just damage control, maybe, or maybe this is exactly how it had to happen. Sometimes people can't see the future until the present becomes unbearable. As I drove back to the city, Manhattan's skyline rising before me like a promise, I thought about transformation, not just Preston's, but my own. The eager to please kid who'd sat through countless family dinners. Being dismissed had become the man holding his family's future in his hands. The computer thing they'd mocked had become the key to their survival. The irony was perfect, painful, and potentially redemptive, if they could swallow their pride. If I could balance ambition with compassion, if we could all admit that the future required releasing the past. 72 hours. The clock was ticking, and for the first time in my life, I held all the cards. The only question was whether winning meant crushing the people who'd doubted me, or lifting them into the future they'd failed to see. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Marcus, what's happening? Daniel won't tell me anything, but he looks terrified. Please call me. I pulled over, staring at her message. She deserved to know that her youngest son was trying to save the family legacy, even if that meant fundamentally changing it. But some conversations couldn't happen over the phone. On my way, I texted back. We need to talk in person. The drive to Westchester had never felt longer or more significant. Every mile took me closer to a confrontation, years in the making, not just with my family, but with the part of myself that still craved their approval even as I held their fate in my hands. The boy who'd been laughed at was gone. In his place stood a man with the power to rebuild or destroy everything they'd taken for granted. The next 72 hours would determine which path I'd choose, and whether my family could accept that their salvation came from the very dreams they'd dismissed Tenter Novam and Togaderatork for. The acquisition. The boardroom at Preston Manufacturing had never seen a meeting like this. On one side of the mahogany table sat the old guard, my father, Daniel, 3 board members who'd known my grandfather, and Preston's CFO, a nervous man named Harold, who kept adjusting his glasses. On the other side, myself, Kai, our lead counsel, Jennifer Chen, and David Chen from Stronghold, who'd insisted on joining to witness history in the making. 48 hours had passed since my ultimatum, 48 hours of heated family discussions, emergency board meetings, and what Christina later described as the complete dismantling of 60 years of stubborn pride. My father looked older than his 67 years, his face etched with lines I didn't remember from Thanksgiving. He'd barely spoken to me since arriving, offering only a curt nod that could have meant anything from greeting to grudging acceptance of my presence. Shall we begin? Jennifer asked, sliding copies of the definitive agreement across the table. We're here to finalize the acquisition of a 49% stake in Preston Manufacturing by SyncFlow Technologies, with specific provisions for operational transformation and strategic partnership. 49%, Daniel repeated, as if saying it aloud might change the reality. I still can't believe we're doing this. The alternative is bankruptcy within 6 months, Harold said quietly. The numbers don't lie, even if we've been lying to ourselves. Harold, my father's voice carried a warning. No, Robert, he's right. This from Richard Steinberg, the longest-serving board member. We've been operating on nostalgia and reputation while the market moved on without us. Marcus saw what we refused to see. I remained silent, having learned that sometimes the most powerful position is letting others make your arguments for you. Let's review the terms, Jennifer continued with professional efficiency. SyncFlow will acquire 49% of Preston Manufacturing for a combination of $15.8 million in cash and $35 million in SyncFlow stock, valuing Preston at approximately $102 million. Our annual revenue. 3 years ago, Daniel said bitterly. Your enterprise value today, I finally spoke. Which, frankly, is generous given your current trajectory. Generous, my father repeated, his first word directly to me. My youngest son is being generous by buying half my life's work. I'm being strategic, I corrected. Preston has assets that can't be replicated: relationships, reputation, institutional knowledge. Combined with SyncFlow's technology, those assets become exponentially more valuable. Walk us through the transformation plan, Richard requested, ever the pragmatist. Kai took over, pulling up a presentation on the room's ancient projector system, another relic Preston had never bothered to upgrade. Phase 1 is immediate stabilization. We'll implement SyncFlow's core platform across all operations within 30 days. This alone should reduce operational costs by 40% and processing time by 60%. 60%. Harold's eyes widened. That would make us faster than any of your competitors. Yes, Kai confirmed. Phase 2 focuses on client retention and acquisition. We'll use our AI to identify at-risk accounts and develop personalized retention strategies. For new business, Preston becomes our enterprise showcase, proof that traditional companies can transform without losing their identity. And Phase 3? Daniel asked. Innovation, I said. Preston stops being just a distributor and becomes a technology-enabled supply chain optimizer. We're not just moving products, we're predicting needs, preventing disruptions, and providing insights your clients never knew they needed. It sounds like you're erasing everything Preston was, my father said. I'm evolving what Preston was into what it needs to be, I replied. Grandpa built this company to serve manufacturers when phone calls and handshakes were cutting edge. I'm updating it to serve those same manufacturers in an age of artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. Using Preston as your guinea pig, Daniel accused. Using Preston as our flagship transformation, David Chen interjected. If I may, Robert, I've known your family's business for 20 years. You've been our supplier, our partner, our trusted advisor, but lately, you've also been our bottleneck. SyncFlow eliminated that bottleneck, which is why we switched. This acquisition gives you the chance to be cutting edge again. By surrendering to my little brother's startup, Daniel muttered. By embracing your brother's innovation, Christina said from the doorway. She'd been waiting outside but apparently decided to make her entrance. Sorry I'm late. Traffic from Philadelphia was brutal. She took a seat between the two camps, physically representing her role as bridge between old and new. I've spent the last 2 days analyzing this deal from every angle. The terms are more than fair. The alternative is catastrophic. And the potential, ... She looked directly at Daniel. The potential is extraordinary. You've been converted, Daniel said. I've been convinced. There's a difference. She turned to our father. Dad, I know this isn't what you envisioned. Selling to Marcus, admitting we were wrong at stings. But would Grandpa choose pride over survival? Would he let the family legacy die rather than evolve? My father's jaw worked silently, decades of certainty warring with present reality. Finally, he looked at me for the first time in years. You planned this. From the beginning. Building something. That would eventually force us to need you. No, I said honestly. I planned to build something you'd be proud of. When that became impossible, I built something successful instead. The fact that it intersects with Preston's needs is partly coincidence, partly inevitable. Every industry faces disruption eventually, and you chose to be our disruptor. I chose to be the disruptor. Preston just happened to be in the path. Just happened, he repeated. Nothing just happens with you, Marcus. You've been playing chess while we played checkers. While you refused to play at all, I countered. Every time I tried to share what I was building, you dismissed it. Every suggestion that Preston needed to modernize was met with lectures about tradition. Well, tradition doesn't pay bills or save jobs or protect retirements. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning, another system that needed updating. Jennifer cleared her throat. Perhaps we should focus on the documents. No, my father interrupted. We need to settle this as a family. First, he stood, walking to the window that overlooked the warehouse floor. Marcus, do you remember when you were 12 and you redesigned our inventory system using Excel? The memory hit me unexpectedly. You said it was impressive but impractical. I was wrong? Harold implemented your system 6 months later. Saved us hundreds of thousands in carrying costs. He turned back to face the room. I've been wrong about a lot of things. About technology. About adaptation. About you. Dad, Daniel started. No son. It's time we faced reality. We built a good company, but we stopped building 20 years ago. We've been coasting on reputation while hungrier, smarter, more innovative competitors ate our lunch. And the hungriest, smartest, most innovative of them all happened to share our dinner table. So you're okay with this? Daniel demanded. With Marcus owning half of everything. I'm okay with Preston surviving, my father said firmly. I'm okay with our employees keeping their jobs. I'm okay with admitting that the future requires different skills than the past. He looked at me again. What I'm not okay with is how we got here, the distance between us, the dismissal that drove you to prove us wrong rather than join us in building something together. That opportunity passed years ago, I said. Did it? Or are we getting a second chance? He returned to his seat. Here's what I propose. Yes, we accept the acquisition, but with one additional condition. Jennifer leaned forward. The terms have been thoroughly negotiated. This isn't about money, my father interrupted. It's about family. Marcus, I want you to take an office here. Not full-time, but regular presence. If you're going to own half this company, if you're going to transform how we operate, then be part of it. Don't just impose change from a distance. Help us understand it. Help us embrace it. I have a company to run, I said, and now you have 2 companies to integrate. Do it from here, at least partially. Show our employees that this isn't a corporate raid but a family reunion. I looked at Kai, who shrugged. We'd planned for many contingencies, but not an invitation back into the fold I'd been expelled from. 2 days a week, I offered. And I want Daniel actively involved in the transformation, not sulking in his office. One condition of my own, Daniel said. You teach me. Really teach me. Not just how to use the technology, but how to think, like you think. How to see what's coming instead of clinging to what was. You want me to mentor you? The role reversal was almost too much to process. I want to learn from someone who built a billion-dollar company in 3 years, even if that someone is my pain-in-the-ass little brother. Christina smiled. Look at that. We're actually acting like a family. Dysfunctional and competitive, but family. Then we have a deal. Jennifer asked, clearly eager to return to the legal mechanics. We have a deal, my father confirmed. God help us, but we have a deal. The next hour was a blur of signatures, notarizations, and wire transfer confirmations, with each signed page. Preston Manufacturing transformed from a traditional family business into something new, a hybrid of heritage and innovation. A test case for how American industry could evolve rather than expire. When the last document was signed, champagne appeared, Dom Perignon, not the cheap stuff from our office celebrations. David Chen raised his glass first. To Preston Manufacturing and SyncFlow Technologies. May their partnership prove that disruption and tradition can coexist? To family, my father added, looking directly at me. Both kinds, the one we're born into and the one we build. We drank. The champagne tasting like vindication and possibility mixed with something more complex. The bittersweet flavor of winning a game that should never have been adversarial. As the meeting broke up, Daniel pulled me aside. You know what the ironic part is? What's that? If you'd stayed at Goldman, taken the safe path, Preston would be dying without a lifeline. Your rebellion saved us. My success saved you, I corrected. The rebellion just made it possible. Same thing, isn't it? He paused, then extended his hand. Welcome back to Preston Manufacturing, partner. I shook his hand, feeling the weight of everything that gesture represented. Let's make Grandpa proud. I think we already have. Just took us different paths to get there. Later, as the others filed out to spread news of the acquisition, I found myself alone with my father in the boardroom. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, highlighting dust motes that danced in the air like tiny celebrations. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. Several, actually. We all said things. No. He held up a hand. Let me finish. I spent so many years building walls around what I thought Preston should be that I couldn't see what it could become. Worse, I couldn't see what you could become. I treated your ambition as betrayal instead of evolution. I could have handled it better too, I admitted. Been less confrontational. More collaborative. Would we have listened? Would I have changed if you hadn't forced it? He shook his head. Sometimes disruption requires distance. You had to leave to become who Preston needed, and now we learn. From you, from SyncFlow, from this whole damned digital revolution I've been hiding from. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. Think you can teach an old manufacturer new tricks? I think you'd be surprised how much manufacturing wisdom applies to technology, different tools, same fundamental goal, creating value efficiently. Your grandfather would have loved this, he said suddenly. Oh, he would have grumbled about computers and algorithms. But underneath, he would have recognized the hustle, the innovation, the refusal to accept limitations. You're more like him than any of us, just with better tools and bigger dreams. He gathered his things, preparing to leave. 2 days a week, you said. When do you start? Monday. We'll begin with a full operational assessment, then Marcus. He interrupted gently. I don't need the CEO speech. I need my son to help save my company. Can you do that? I can do that. He nodded and headed for the door, then stopped. Your mother's planning a dinner. A real celebration this time. No mockery, no dismissal, just ... family. Will you come? I'll be there. After he left, I sat alone in the boardroom where so many Preston deals had been made over the decades. The portraits of my grandfather and father watched from the walls, stern faces that had once seemed to judge my choices. Now they felt more like witnesses to evolution, guardians of a legacy that would survive by transforming. My phone buzzed with messages from the team, from investors, from journalists who'd somehow already caught wind of the acquisition. The business world would see this as a strategic move, a smart play by a rising unicorn. They'd analyze the project the revenues, and debate the implications for traditional industry. But sitting there in the quiet boardroom, I saw it differently. This wasn't just business. It was redemption, not just for Preston, but for every family dinner where dreams were dismissed. Every suggestion that was ignored, every moment of feeling like an outsider in my own home. The company they'd laughed at had just bought the company they'd revered. But more than that, the family that had fractured over different visions of success had found a way to unite those visions into something stronger. I pulled out my laptop and began drafting the integration plan. There was work to do, systems to merge, cultures to blend, skeptics to convert. The hardest part wasn't the technology, it was the psychology. Teaching people who'd always done things one way that there was a better way, without making them feel obsolete. But if I could turn my family's mockery into motivation, their dismissal into determination, surely I could turn Preston's resistance into renaissance. The sun was setting by the time I left, painting the industrial park in shades of gold and amber. The building looked the same as always, but everything had changed. Preston Manufacturing was no longer just my family's past, it was part of my future, our future. As I drove away, I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner that had started everything. How my frustration had fueled innovation, how their laughter had launched a unicorn. It wasn't the path any of us had planned, but maybe that was the point. The best transformations rarely follow the expected route. My phone rang. Mom, probably calling about the celebration dinner. I smiled, answering with words I never thought I'd say. Hi Mom. Yeah, I just left Preston. Everything went perfectly. I'll see you Sunday. And Mom, tell everyone to bring their laptops. It's time they learned what their company can really do. The laughter on the other end was warm, proud, accepting everything I'd wanted to hear 3 years ago. Better late than never. And sometimes, late was exactly the right time. Preston Manufacturing had a new chapter beginning. So did the Williams family. And for the first time in years, those two stories were the same story, heading in the same direction, forward.